Alrighty, so this is a 2004 R6, and today we're going to talk a little bit about idling issues. So there are a litany of reasons a 2003 to 2005 R6 could idle poorly, roughly not idle at all. We're going to talk about all of them today. I experienced a couple of different issues with my idle. One turned out to be the idle screw, the Tps sensor, and the fact that my spark plugs were not gapped properly. So we're going to talk about everything, and we'll jump right in. Start off with the reasons why an R6 might idle poorly or not at all. So number one reason, most likely coils. Now there are a couple of different reasons for this. If you have a 2003 and it's been sitting for a long time, you bought it used, etc., and the coils have never been replaced, if it has the factory Denso coils, those have a recall. They were really bad about going defective and not working at all. So there's actually a recall on them. If you have a 2003 and it has the original coils, you can actually take that into the dealership and they should do the warranty work for free. There should be no charge at all. They'll replace your coils, pay for the parts and the labor. That being said, that's only if you have a 2003 and it's the original Denso coils. If you bought Denso coils yourself, you're kind of screwed. So coils, that would probably be the number one reason for any 2003 to 2005 R6 to idle poorly. That would be the first thing that I check. Second, always spark plugs. Spark plugs, for a number of reasons, they could be bad. Simply the connection inside of them is no longer conducting electricity. They could be fouled. The outside is not conducting electricity where the little node is, and they can be gapped improperly, where the spark is actually not being produced consistently from the node to the inside of the spark plug, which would not allow the piston to fire, so it wouldn't ignite the gasoline in the piston, and you would have what's called a misfire, which would cause a poor idle. So a number of reasons for spark plugs, and both of those you can actually check in your diagnostic menu on your R6. All you got to do is hold these two, turn the key, and then wait for 8 seconds and repeat. I have another video up on that, so if you want to check that, feel free. The next reason would be the TPS, the throttle position sensor. That's on the right side of the bike. Also a very easy fix. All you got to do is take it out. It is a T20 Torx, so it's a security Torx. It's got a little node or a bump in that center right there. You have to have a security Torx bit. If you don't have a security Torx bit and you try to use a normal Torx bit, you're going to strip the hell out of it and you're going to be sorry you did so. So all you got to do is take that out, all right, put some electric cleaner in it, reposition it correctly. If it's not 100% lined up, it will not function right. So you need to make sure you line it up correctly. So line it back up, redo your Torx bits, and that should run perfectly fine. If it's a TPS sensor, that will also be in your diagnostic menu. I believe the TPS sensor needs to be from 15 to 19. It'll give you a number, and you can actually pull your throttle all the way back and it'll give you another number. I can't remember what the second set of numbers is within. You can check that in the owner's manual. There's a nice big chart. It'll tell you what everything should read. So one of the last things you can check is your idle screw. Now, when I bought this, I had a couple of problems. Number one, the bike would idle poorly, so it would jump. It would jump around. So that's very indicative of a coil or a spark plug problem. You know, if it doesn't stay steady and it kind of jumps around, it's misfiring. It generally means it's misfiring. The second problem that I had is it would idle incredibly low. So I attributed that falsely to the idling problem. I attributed it to the coils of the spark plugs. I initially believed that it was possibly only running on 1 or 2 coils. That was incorrect. So what I did was I changed the coils, I changed the spark plugs, I gapped the spark plugs properly, and I still had the problem where it would idle low. It idled phenomenally, but it would idle really low and ultimately stall unless I held the throttle. So I would have to manually hold the throttle up to about 1500, which is where it should be idling normally. It should be idling at about 1350 RPMs. So I went and checked my idle screw. Turns out, previous owner of the bike, you know, this little idle screw had come off. This poor bike has been abused, and dumb old me didn't notice it when he bought it. So this little idle screw had come out. You can see the fitting no longer really fits well in there. It had slid way back in next to the engine, so it had vibrated up against that engine for God knows how long while the other owner was riding it, and it turned counterclockwise and decreased the idle speed. So after going through all these other tests, I realized that was the problem. And it blends in back there too, unfortunately. It kind of looks like it belongs there from a distance, especially if you're not noticing that your idle screw is missing. So I went ahead, I returned clockwise to increase my idle speed. If you want to decrease your idle speed, you turn counterclockwise. We'll go ahead and take a look at the throttle on the other side. So this is your throttle mechanism, and this is the other side of the idle screw. So that's what's adjusting your idle right there. Now you can see I have a broken throttle cable. See that? It's not bouncing back. That's kind of a problem. Yeah. So this is what holds that throttle assembly right there. So that's what you're adjusting. You're pushing this out on the other side with that idle screw. Now the other part of my problem, you can see that the slop in that throttle up there on top. This is the other part of my my problem right here. So I don't know how much, to the extent that this is affecting the actual idle, besides the slop in the cable that you take up before you before you can actually get any gas out of it. And that slop right there is this little line right here. So I'm gonna go move the throttle and try to keep a good look on that. That tiny little movement you saw earlier pulls up all the slack out of that line. Now, because the cables are broken, they're actually frayed pretty badly up here. It won't reset, which is another problem. I do have new throttle cables on the way, and I guess that's a freebie for this video because I wasn't really intending to talk about that, but since we're here, c'est la vie. So, anyway, those are the problems that you can try to fix and help to diagnose you with an idle problem. Anything except the idle screw will come up in your R6 diagnostics menu. If you don't know how to do that, look at my other video. It's very simple, it's very easy. Basically, you want to run the bike for a little bit, clear the codes, and then run it for a little bit more so that any old codes are then cleared out and you keep the codes that you are currently running. So that way you don't get caught up chasing old codes, that kind of thing. I've done that a couple of times. It works very well, and the computer's very good at pointing out things. It'll even tell you if it's ever had a misfire in the history of the bike. As long as nobody's cleared the codes, it'll tell you if it's had a misfire. The problem with that is, vehicles misfire. So if you've never cleared the codes at all, you're likely to have that problem, at least once, especially with an older vehicle. Anyway, those are the common idle problems with a 2003 to 2005 R6. I hope this video helped you. You can get coils pretty much anywhere. You can get spark plugs pretty much anywhere. I believe this one uses an NGK. It's a CR10EK, I believe. CR10EK is the spark plug that this uses. And as far as TPS sensors go, you can get those on eBay new, nice and cheap. And if you don't want to pay the whatever, like the 23 bucks or whatever it is to get them from eBay, you can just clean it out with electronic cleaner. That should work fine. I've heard pretty good results from that. I had pretty decent results from that. And otherwise, I'd check your idle screw. So, hope this video helped you. Good luck to you. Have a good one.